Current or ex-theme park employees, what are some dirty secrets that most people don't know about? I could individually control the speed of your go-kart. So if you were a D to me, you were going to lose every race you were in. The park I worked at, the games were easier to win earlier in the day so that people would carry around the giant prizes and entice other people to play. We used to crank up the amount of salt in the fries and then build a soda stall next to it. Next we'd remove some of the paths to trap guests in the salty fries expensive soda area. We made a killing. Vomit, with no visible blood, is either cleaned up with a sawdust-like material to soak up the liquid and then swept into a dustbin or hosed off with a garden hose. The coaster seat or table is usually not sanitized or anything, so you are sitting in dried vomit particles. Don't ever go in the ball pits. Little kids track all sorts of food and grime into the pit and regularly pee in there since they confuse it for a pool. The balls are only cleaned once a week, and even then they are just put in a net bag and hosed off. You just keep spraying until the water stops coming off ground. They are then air dried and not sanitized in any way. My friend in high school used to work at Hershey Park and one day we went together. When we ordered lunch, I was just planning on asking for a cup of water with my meal so I didn't have to pay an extra $5. My friend told me to ask the cashier for a cup of magic water instead of just a cup of water. I trusted this friend, so I did what she said. When I received my cup of magic water, I took a sip and to my surprise it was Sprite. So I got a free cup of Sprite with my meal that day. Former Six Flags employee. My park is the safest in the country because we call the rides down for rain, for vomit, for lost items. They could be obstructing the track. So if a ride is down, it's probably not for a mechanical reason. We even pulled an emergency stop while I was being trained on one roller coaster because a military official lost his military ID and was threatening my boss if we didn't go get it for him. If people knew how small that issue was, they'd be furious that we stopped the ride. Phantasialand, Germany. The Africans were all sent to work on the Black Mamba ride. Kinda embarrassing. My aunt and uncle work for Disney World. Apparently when someone pukes on a ride, it's called in as a protein spill. A lot of scary, dangerous rides are operated by stupid teens. Source: was a stupid 16-year-old. Learned to operate rides at Six Flags. My place used to say that any change cash lost on a ride was donated to charity. If they meant the charity of their employees' pockets, then they weren't lying. Quarters were the good ones to find, since it was rarely bills. Most theme parks avoid paying overtime because they are considered seasonal. Therefore they understaff and get employees to work 60 hours, usually at less than stellar pay rates. That's completely legal though. As far as shady it, the instances are few and far between because parks are cash cows and no one wants to duck that up. At the water park I worked at, the pools had their pH levels checked constantly. Two people's job was to wall around all day and continuously check the levels. The food is at these places, but that is not a dirty little secret. About 8 years ago, I managed a whitewater rafting ride, the big donut tubes that can sit 6 people, as a side job while in college. One day, the water filter broke down. The managers kept the ride running for over 2 weeks anyway. The water smelled so bad and turned dark green-brown. The inside of the raft smelled like a month-old porta potty. We were instructed to tell guests the water filter was broken but the water was clean, which I'm pretty sure was a lie. Thankfully, being a shift leader, I didn't need to go anywhere near the water, but I felt bad for my employees and the guests who rode despite looking obviously disgusted by the smell. Former ride op who worked multiple major level parks. How often the ride crew members are hungover, possibly still drunk. You work with the same people day in and day out. You become family, especially at the age when you don't have much responsibility. Other than gas in the car, all you're doing is partying. Park closes 10 PM. By 11 PM you're shotgunning beers in your manager's backyard while the new kid is doing backflips off the roof of the house into the pool. That goes till 4 to 5 AM and you all have to be at work at 9:30 AM. Good times. Also, the inter-park relationships. MTV should do a reality show on working at an amusement park. The amount of drama. We're officially out of bought license plates. Listen for context. Have a magical day is frequently used as go duck yourself. Worked a churro cart next to a large pond in the park. At night it was impossible to keep the bugs out of the cinnamon and sugar bin. How gross the food is. Overpriced and frozen. Dropped on the floor and picked up with unwashed hands. I worked in the in-park subway, and my manager made me wash off moldy tomatoes to serve to customers because she forgot to order fresh food. Never mess with ride ops. Safety is always number one, and I will kick you out of the park if you're threatening someone's safety, including your own. Listen to all the instructions even if you don't agree because it's there to prevent you from being hurt. Disney has an underground tunnel system for workers in different areas of the park to move around so you don't see people dressed up from any other area out of their place. Also, there's a color Disney uses in their parks that is the least detectable shade of green, so trash cans and stuff are basically hidden in plain sight. I used to be in management for a small family-owned park in Utah. They hire lots of 14 and 15-year-old kids because they own a few cattle. Not exactly sure how this works, but I think technically they are considered farm hands, which allows them to work at a younger age than the usual 16. Since this place is one of the only employers in Utah to do this, they hire tons of the youngs. Kids poop in the wave pool constantly. All we do is clear it out for 10 minutes and then let people back in. Disney World has bed bugs. There's an actual code for them. I want to remember code 206. Maybe, and they've been found all over the resort rooms. Makes sense, but also on the rides. Epcot is especially bad for bed bugs. I worked at the Fudgery in a Six Flags. It's technically a part of retail, so none of the employees have any food safety training, which means the back is never cleaned properly. It had mold, and kids don't get new gloves after handling disgusting, sweaty money. I worked at Disney World and at Universal. I wish I had dirt to share, but both companies were on the up and treated guests with care and provided workers safe environments in which to do their jobs. What I can share for those interested: mangers get paid very little, but stay on for the love of job. People in charge of rides instantly hate anyone who stands up when they're clearly not supposed to. You ruin our days by doing so, jackasses. Quite a bit, even ignoring the markups. Even if they gave a prize every time you played a dumb game, the park still wins. Let's see. Many of the people who you really would hope are mature adults and aren't drunk high, well, are 16-year-old stoners. They also live a very exciting life that makes annoying sitcoms seem reasonable. Guess who Jenny from X Roller Coaster was banging behind the fry stand? I assure you I don't care, but you will tell me anyway. Many people are massively overworked. I don't mean like, oh, he did a few hours of overtime and hit 45 hours, I mean 60-80 plus a week for months straight. We don't get paid overtime. We can work anywhere from 12 to 16 hours a day, and there's a special exception in the US labor code that says that theme park employees don't need to be paid overtime if they're a seasonal employee, and it just so happens that theme parks mostly hire seasonal employees. Chew on that for your next visit to a theme park north of the Mason-Dixon line. Beyond that, here's a tip: if it's a seasonal park and they are looking to hire, for the love of God, do not apply at the start of the season. They'll tell you that there are more benefits, but if it's at the start of a season, they're understaffed, which means you work double shifts. An employee in the park collapsed in early May after being on his feet for over 10 hours straight. Former park ops at a Florida theme park here. My job was to do custodial work in the bathroom and pathways, sweep, take out trash, hose, etc. of my designated section while occasionally getting assigned theater duty. That $15 meal that you just paid for in the restaurant? Yeah. The employees can get all of that for $2 or $3. Just depends on the items. Theme park food is definitely way overpriced for guests. If you complain enough, you will get what you want. When the theater hits capacity, I can't let anyone in. You can give me a sob story about how you traveled all the way from Antarctica for all I care. The second that you mention wanting to talk to a supervisor, I have to get them. 9/10 times my supervisor will let you through the show no problem, just to keep you happy. Capital I, on the other hand, will be slightly annoyed, but that's how things work in theme parks. There are plainclothes security officers walking around the whole entire park, who probably don't even notice. Please think twice before doing anything stupid, like having sex on the sky ride. Disney CM here. We hate guest. We hate our job. The end. We are supposed to say have a magical day, but pretty much it means duck you when dealing with demanding rude people. Every morning the wave pool is crystal clear. When it's not, it's because of piss, sunblock, dirt, etc. Everyone knows they are full of these things, but I don't think people realize how clean the water is when it starts off in the morning. Not really an answer to your question, but I just got back from Six Flags. $80 to get in, $11 dry room temperature burger, $5 for 8 stale chocolate covered pretzels, and $5 for a Powerade. Theme parks are trash. I'll probably never go again. Disney cares so much more about guests than cast. I had a good experience with the company, but I remember a time I told them I would get injured doing X thing. They made me do it anyway and didn't care until I sliced open my leg and my costume in front of guests. Worked at a haunted house in one of the Cedar Fair amusement parks. Actors get beaten the duck up on the regular. Part of it is fight or flight responses, which is fine. The other part is just assholes. We usually have a spotter who wanders outside the house itself and passes along word of any unsavory guests or management on their way in. As for the park itself, the most notable thing I can think of was the preferential treatment. Anyone who was a family member, friend of high-end staff got in free. Got to go to the front of lines, etc. Or investors lol. I worked for an amusement park in Ohio for 2 summers, and the worst things I've seen are for the foods department. I personally watched a box of frozen fries for one of the food stands fall off a pallet, get semi-crushed by the forklift tire, get thrown back into the pallets to be served. They also had their entire food warehouse get closed down for a better part of the summer because of a bird infestation. The company salvaged what they could and threw it into refrigerated trailers to be served from. The summers I worked there were great. Exhausting and probably borderline illegal for the open-close shifts. They had people working going from 7/8 am to maybe 12 am or later. I wouldn't give up the friends I made there, but it could have definitely been better. Guy at a chicken tendies restaurant in the theme park was a farmer hick. Liked to do stupid pranks. Turnover was high, so a manager was 16yo. Basically kids run them parks. Anyway, wanted to fry his boot in the deep fryer to see what would happen. Boot was caked in cowet. He dropped it in. At this time a customer was itching about not getting his french fries. Said I didn't pay $47 to come in this park and stand in a line all day. This was about 0.17 years ago now. Anyway, hick farmer was getting annoyed with trying to tong his boot out of the fryer. Gets annoyed at the customer and throws the fries down. Fry basket right over the caked boot. Cooked until golden brown and served up to the customer. That was my first day working at the park and my last day in food services. Forever. To this day, if I'm ever dragged to the park for whatever reason, I always avoid that chicken restaurant. Not an employee. Open bracket. Grounds parties are the best parties. Former janitor. Some parents don't give a duck where they leave dirty diapers. IDK if this counts, but I used to work at Red Rocks Amphitheater, and guess what? Lots of people have died there. Usually 1-3 every summer. People overdose at concerts, trip and crack their heads on the stairs, fall trying to illegally climb the rocks, etc. The tilt-a-whirl is slightly reclined when seated, so all your change, and phone possibly, will fall out of your pocket. Specifically check your seat after this ride. If I had $1 for every time someone lost money out of TH. Wait, I do have $1 for every time. I worked at Worlds of Fun. I passed all ride operating tests without actually being at the ride itself or even seeing the panel. Since I passed the tests, I could then operate any of the rides at any point during the season, even though I realistically did not know any of the rides. Frontier City in Oklahoma City. Dear Lord, where do I begin? I'm just gonna do a blow by blow. Everything in our retail side is marked up by at minimum 600%. We get the cheapest, flimsiest it that is worth absolutely nothing and sell it. All the games are rigged and the prizes are worth nothing. Mornings is when it's best to play. The carts with flashing light up toys have a lifespan of 6 hours max and insanely flimsy. We usually have a hard time finding ones that actually work to put on the cart. Employees aren't allowed to eat the food or sit down while working no matter where they are and given 30 minutes break per 8 hours. The food we are allowed to eat is outrageously overpriced food you'd find at a gas station. One meal there is more than we make in an hour and a half. There is nowhere to store a packed lunch. We stop rides and pretend they're broken so we can't take a break while maintenance walks down to check out our ride. We've had multiple people nearly die at the park. We are told what to write on the police report and if we speak to them directly or the press we are fired and banned for life. TLDR. Staff are strongly mistreated, underpaid and you're getting tremendously ripped off buying anything. Not lurid but just behind the scenes from a different angle, I worked as an acrobat in a show at a park one summer. It was amazing. I got paid $125 a day, so as a 19-year-old like a decade ago who had been waiting tables for like 12-13 hour shifts the summer before, it felt like I was an actual rock star or something. I had money for my monthly rent in less than a week each month and money to spare that I could blow on clubbing and stuff. I had 3 half-hour shows a day, with 2 3-hour breaks between shows. During the breaks I could go ride rides because as a contracted employee through the production company, I wasn't technically a direct employee of the park. It was a medium-sized park that I'd thought large as like a high schooler. But I got tired of the rides in like 3-4 days. Then I wandered to the water park and found the lazy river and realized I could just ride the lazy river all day and tan and get paid for it. Later even that got boring to do all day, so I would spend my time between shows getting better at my acro that I was performing in the show. But I didn't want to get hurt pushing too hard on the job since there was no workers' comp. So I ended up learning to play guitar and sing at the top of the scaffolding on the set. Like 25 feet up with a cool breeze and audio privacy just from the amount of park noise around me. I'd do it again if I had the chance. But I'm not good enough anymore and have to be a grown-up. It was probably the best 4 months of my life. In some ways, I guess the only behind the scenes thing that I think everyone would be interested in is just like, I was allowed to walk everywhere in the park. I had an ID badge that someone could theoretically check. But my costume for the show was streetwear anyway and no one ever really checked who I was or asked why I was where I was at any point in the summer. All summer I just walked around exploring the minutiae of the park with impunity. And 80% of the time I could have been a random park goer and no one would have checked. It's really amazing how deep into places you can just walk acting confidently, without anyone asking if you should be there.